These are 4 things that you should know about a Scorpio moon. This video is going to be interesting to you if you have a Scorpio moon. It'll be interesting to you if you have a Scorpio moon that's a close person in your life. I think the first video I ever posted on YouTube was about Scorpio moons. I don't think the quality was that good. The lighting wasn't that great. And that stuff doesn't really matter that much. But I've done, I think, like dating, all the zodiac signs videos. I've jumped around with some different video topics. But I do want to do an updated interpretation of each natal moon sign. And so I have done one for Pisces already. I do want to do an updated one for Scorpio. So here we are, right? This is the video, Moon in Scorpio. And I think breaking down things into numbers, people love that, very BuzzFeedy. So we're gonna go with 4 things. I'm notorious for being a person that says, oh, like 4 things that you need to know about this. And then I do 3 things or I do 6 things. So, whatever, like this isn't court. I'm a lawyer in my, full-time in my day job. This is not court. This is not the law. This is a YouTube video. So I can do what I want. I can bend the rules, right? The first thing to know about Scorpio moon is it is arguably the most intense, emotionally intense placement, natal placement to have in a chart, the most intense moon position. And I would argue these honestly are the most intense Scorpios. For Scorpio suns, people that have other planets, maybe an ascendant in Scorpio, you definitely see this, don't F with me kind of nature about them. They can appear intimidating. TLDR, you can sense that intensity about them, and they are generally intense. But sometimes it's more like intensity that's like a Klondike bar. It's that outer chocolate is intense, but on the inside, they're not so intense. Maybe they're a little bit more easygoing. Who knows? Scorpio moon is very intense. They are not a Klondike bar. They are just like a giant hunk of cacao that hasn't been processed from some other country. I don't think they're grown in America. I'm sure there's some exploitive capitalistic practice we do to get the chocolate to put it in a Reese's bar or a Klondike bar, but they're just like the pure essence of Scorpio, just injected. It's filled in their veins. Like everything they do is scorpionic. And the reason I say they're more intense than other Scorpios is because the moon, it represents our inner personality, our private personality. It's our instinctual reactions to things. It is, for all intents and purposes, the moon is the fastest moving cycle in the natal chart system, in the system of celestial planetary bodies that we generally pay attention to. And so it's always like that is the ether inside someone. That is the motor. As they are going about and reacting and observing, the emotions, the instincts, the stuff that's triggered inside the body, physically, mentally, not just through the central nervous system, through the parasympathetic nervous system. I think it's the unconscious nervous system. That's all moon energy. And when it's in Scorpio, it's so intense, right? It's reacting to someone being fake or saying that, oh, I really want to spend time with you, or, they're flaking out of an engagement and they're giving an excuse, and you can just tell that it's an excuse and it's a bad one. And it's like you have a scowl or some kind of distrust that you just wear on your face, and you're not even always aware that you're doing it, right? It comes out. There are people that have Scorpio in their chart that can decide to maybe channel other energies in their chart, but when you're a Scorpio moon, you have no choice but to be intensely scorpionic. And if you try, and we can talk a little bit later about what happens if you try to squelch that energy, it doesn't lead to good results. And it's typically a big process coming to understand, to embrace, to channel that intense energy. That's a big rites of passage for any Scorpio moon. That's why, adolescence, teenage years, early adulthood can be so bumpy, as that we kind of navigate how to do that. It's way easier said than done. But in short, the sensitivity is intense. Why is it intense? I don't know if why is a helpful question, but it just is. They're sensitive, right? Scorpio moons are always, I think, looking for absolute truth. They're looking for life experience in its rawest, purest form. And even in situations in life where social niceties or routine social norms kind of grease the wheels and make things easier, Scorpio moons are always on some level uncomfortable with it if they feel like there's some sort of falsehood about it. And for better or worse, Scorpio moons are always going to be emotionally driven towards experiences which are going to transform them, change them, which experiences that are going to kill some part of them, not in a destructive way, but in a way that, like, I don't know, sometimes they're like toenails. Well, not sometimes. Generally, if you have normal toenails, they keep growing, they die, you got to clip them, kind of gross. I'm not even going to make a foot joke. It's a little bit scary sometimes being an influencer, having an audience. Not even going to talk about feet, but like there's weird people out there. I don't want to encourage anyone. It's again, that process of really wanting to explore the limits of human experience. It's like for Scorpio moon, nothing is ever quite like good enough or real enough until they get as close as possible to annihilation, to something that challenges them in every way, shape, or form. Could be physically, could be mentally, emotionally. There could be a lot of Scorpio moons too that aren't always even aware that this process is going on. That's why I've talked about it in a video called The Hardest Part About Being a Scorpio. There's a strong shame instinct because sometimes when this sort of instinctual tendency is not totally brought into conscious awareness, it can lead to what a Scorpio moon might perceive as self-sabotage. It can lead to shame. It can be like, why the hell am I like this? Why can't I get it right? But I think the most important thing for a Scorpio moon to understand is that intensity is a gift. It is a door, again, towards transforming the self. And it doesn't always feel like that because sometimes it's just like a slight comment or an indirect dig. Like maybe someone makes a comment about your appearance or how you dress or how you look, and they might say, oh, I would love to wear something like that, but it makes me look like I'm 15. I can't get away with it. And so it's like, oh, that's maybe a bad example because Scorpio moons would be affected by that, but they also realize it's kind of trivial. All I'm saying is that a Scorpio moon intensity, if you're not a Scorpio moon, you have to understand that Scorpio moons feel emotions viscerally. It's almost like an emotional synesthesia. What does that mean? Well, it means that emotions are felt physically. And you might say, oh, well, that's kind of like everyone. If you feel anxiety, you kind of can feel, tense, tension in your chest, your shoulders, whatever. But for Scorpio moon, it's almost like it's different. It's like real intense pain is almost like literally a sucker punch. That's honestly why you can sometimes see Scorpio moons that will anesthetize themselves. They can engage in self-harm. They can engage in risky drug use. This kind of stuff is a way to try and numb and escape those feelings and escape that. What Scorpio moons find is, or if they engage that behavior, it's like there's always going to be an edge. It's like either they can be up against it and experience it vulnerably and with conscious awareness, or they will again find other more destructive ways of dealing with it, which also bring them to another edge, sometimes more dangerous edges or edges that are going to be harder to fall off of and recover and initiate that sort of transformational process. Blah, 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 a lot of words. How does this actually manifest? Well, it means that comments or things that are said to a Scorpio moon hurt more, I think, than sometimes other people understand. Sometimes a simple rejection or rebuff, it can sit with a Scorpio moon for so long. And I'm not giving Scorpio moons trump cards. A more evolved Scorpio moon is going to learn how to really control and channel that emotional energy and intensity and decide where they want to invest it. A little bit like Star Wars, like using the Force, especially early on in life, and also just inevitably when you commit yourself to things, when you fall in love with things, when you are truly embracing the world, there's always the inevitable possibility of loss, of people leaving, of things dying, of losing things. And so there's always going to be just a pain and a strong emotional sensitivity. Over time, a Scorpio moon is going to spend over time they're going to spend time in that place, right? In that kind of dark place. And early on, unless they're lucky enough to maybe have some kind of sage or mentor, someone that really understands them in life, which is usually not in the nature of Scorpio moon karma. They have some people, but sometimes they have a lot that they're going to have to work through on their own. What they'll find is that when they try to initially communicate or share that experience or describe it, they are going to get shut down or rebuffed by the outside world because people don't totally understand the sensitivity. To them, if they're not looking at things maybe through a more holistic or empathetic or astrological scorpionic lens, they're going to see it, the Scorpio moon's sensitivity, as a liability, as a problem, as a defect, as something they need to outgrow or shunt or whatever. And so a Scorpio moon can often feel very alienated in some of their lowest points because they're going through something so intense. And one, either they can't share it or describe it, or two, they're made to feel like an outcast or there's something wrong with them for even feeling that way in the first place. And this is, don't get me wrong, for a Scorpio moon, this is a hard place to be in. But again, diamonds are formed from the heaviest, most intense applied pressure. And from this space, Scorpio moon builds a deep and rich inner world. They will typically be able to build a vocabulary of words or symbols to describe or attach their experience, if not for other people, just for themselves. It will help them build an appreciation for the complexities and the nuances and the shadow side of life, because we go through mainstream education, we're socialized by the media, by our culture, by all this stuff. None of it really deals with the shadow. And this again gets back to the sensitivity, intuition, perception of a Scorpio moon is like they are always able to see the good of a situation and they can see the shadow side. And they get a bad rap sometimes for being especially focused or preoccupied with the shadow side of things because they know that it's not being given its fair attention. We need to acknowledge these shadow parts of ourselves. A lot of negativity, bad behavior, on an individual level or a collective level is because we ignored the shadow or we didn't integrate the shadow. And Scorpio moons see the shadow. They want to call it out. Sometimes it's through very serious, noble effort. Sometimes it's through dark humor. Sometimes it's through by example, like they'll embody the shadow of their environment. Acquainted with that, again, further contributes to this development of an inner sort of richness and an inner awareness. And from this spot, we're led to number 2, and it's this characteristic of Scorpio moon of being able to use things in their life to transform and to heal. It's not just having the capacity to really experience and really feel the pain of the world, it's also giving meaning to it. It's also feeling it, using that to harden and sharpen their senses of wearing away what is unessential, which is unimportant. The erosion over time by wind or water or whatever. It's just something is hardened inside a Scorpio moon. And sometimes it's a conscious process where a Scorpio moon is actually aware and they're involved in the narrative building, post-crisis, and they're able to write a new positive story for themselves and really be conscious about how they're using a negative experience to grow and to push themselves. And sometimes it's just something that happens. A Scorpio moon can something horrible can happen. They have a setback, they're depressed, they lose someone in their life, there's a breakup, and they just feel like total and utter shit. They're at rock bottom. They don't feel like they're doing anything. They don't feel like any of this wisdom or growth is happening, right? And then they find themselves maybe a couple years later and they have this like new ability, this new groundedness in self, this new wisdom. And then they realize, oh, actually like that kind of positive erosion of withering away what wasn't essential, that was happening. I am now this like stronger person. So it happens in two different ways. When I talk about eroding away, it's like eroding away what is fake. A big part of coming of age, especially in the first Saturn return of becoming our own independent person outside of our family, outside of our friends, outside of our friends at school, whatever, is really deciding who am I, what are my values. And a Scorpio not only attracts experiences, but can totally emotionally receive and psychologically receive the fruits of experience in a way that helps them get very acquainted with what is important and what is not. And they're more inclined or more able to cast away what's not important. It's like, oh, I always wanted to be a fireman because all my parents wanted to be firemen, and I grew up with a bunch of firemen, and I always knew that's what I wanted. And then all this stuff happens, and then they're like, wait, that wasn't really me. That's something that had to get cut away. When I got rid of that plaque, when I got rid of that excess, like fake stuff, got rid of the tinsel on the tree, like I realized this is just the tree here. And what I really want to be is a banker. Like I've always wanted to do that. No one wanted me to do that, but I know that's kind of the process. And usually it's not so neat. It's not, oh, I can be a fireman, or usually it's just, a multi-year ongoing lifelong process for a Scorpio moon of kind of stripping away what is fake and staying true to what is essential. But that's just kind of high level what's happening. And this is the real catch-22 with a Scorpio moon, is that while they are a sensitive sign, right, while they can be forced to tears when maybe they don't want to be forced to tears, sometimes they can cry in movies, or just a single backhanded comment, right, in a relationship, just it can literally reduce them into, an awful night, a tear fest, and people say, oh, this person is so weak, like, what's the problem, right? The catch-22 is like, yes, they have this sensitivity. It's not really a weakness, but they have this sensitivity, but it's also connected to this super intense and powerful and Armageddon-like emotional resiliency. And everything that does happen to them, it's like the laws of thermodynamics. It's all used and preserved. And that energy received is energy that will continue to propel the machinery of a Scorpio moon's life. And in situations where other people would absolutely give up, throw in the towel, forget it, a Scorpio moon will just stay fixed and resilient and undeterred. And that's why they sometimes also have a reputation for being obsessed, emotionally obsessed, because when we're talking about this resilience, it's in the place of the moon. It's emotional resilience. And having that scorpionic energy in the moon, you can compare it to other types of Scorpios, or they're resilient generally. The overarching themes, if they're a Scorpio ascendant, there's going to be a life path of resilience. People see them as resilient. Scorpio sun, they are also very resilient people, but if they have maybe like a Libra moon, there's something different going on there when emotionally you're not so attached or fixated on outcomes, where Scorpio moon is you're emotionally fixated on the end game, and whatever that means for you, however you define that. Scorpio moons have to be very careful about what kind of attention they, where they direct that power, but it's so intense. And that's why obsession, emotional obsession is often, and emotional feelings are often triggered in relationships and romantic endeavors. And that's why you can sometimes, Scorpio moons can take breakups really hard, or there can be unrequited love, or just other situations where they just feel an intense rejection or alienation that is sometimes one-sided. I mean, it's not that they don't feel it if it's a mutual thing, but this here is a Scorpio moon, right, that is either vulnerably and admirably placed their trust in someone and that trust was broken, or they attached it to something that didn't really need it or deserve it. I'm not going to tell Scorpio moons, they're only going to figure out how to kind of balance this power through their own experience, right? It's always a combination of being vulnerable and willing to devote that intensity to things that they care about, while also keeping stuff reserved in the tank, and sometimes devoting that emotional energy towards selfish personal goals too. A certain level of healthy selfishness and healthy boundaries are really powerful for a Scorpio moon. And what they'll find over time is that if they have a lot of romantic relationships where it's been one-sided or they're repelling people, is when they really kind of control and master that emotional energy and are using it to move in their life in ways that satisfy them and make them happy, they will ultimately attract the people that are right for them. But they don't need to throw that out there. They don't need to go fishing with that, right? Because when you do that, you're still going to attract people. Like, people are going to love that intensity and that obsession, but you're going to be attracting the wrong people, the people that ultimately will not be able to give a comparable thing back. Digressing, but this brings me to number 3, the tendency of Scorpio moon to be mysterious, secretive, to hold a lot of things inside. And this is, again, something to be aware of if you know a Scorpio moon. If you are one, this is, again, a little bit of a life karmic riddle, and there's no right answer. There is a lot going on in the inner world and inner workings of a Scorpio moon, and there's just not enough bandwidth in the outside world for a Scorpio moon to always verbalize or express or share every little thing that they're going through. While not everyone can handle their emotional intensity, their sensitivity, even the people that can aren't going to be able to handle it all the time, or it's not always super effective or efficient to give life to every emotion that a Scorpio moon feels. Sometimes they feel just a super intense, angry, irrational emotion that they know is irrational, and sometimes they just have to feel it. And if someone is like, "Oh, what's wrong?" It never helps to like say, "Oh, nothing," like nothing's wrong, because people know. But it doesn't mean you have to go and give life to everything. I think the flip side of that is that sometimes people find that, oh, Scorpio moons, they're being so secretive, they're keeping back secrets. It can be the case, but it's not inherently the case. It's just the fact that rich, complex, intense, painful, blissful, every type of emotional feeling existing in this inner world, that's the life, that's the gift to a Scorpio moon, that's also the curse. And not everyone is going to be able to understand that. Again, another flip side of this karmic riddle or kohan is that Scorpio moons still do need to find ways to channel that. Just because you're choosing not to express something in a certain way doesn't mean you should bury it or not outlet it, or maybe you can communicate it in a Diet Coke version versus a Coca-Cola version, or maybe you need to journal, or maybe you need to run, right? You can't ball it all up, because then it's going to explode like a volcano. There's also a lot of things that a Scorpio moon experiences that, because it's such an intense process at the instinctual emotional level, sometimes there needs to be some time out, like a timeout period before they can even really put language or thoughts to it. They have to feel it, let things settle, and then maybe they start reflecting. But sometimes it's just helpful to just feel and not turn the mind off a little bit. Eventually in life, though, a Scorpio moon will come to find, or hopefully they'll find the right people that love them for the way that they are. They love that intensity. They want to love them. They want to be a part of their life. They want Scorpio moon to share those things. And Scorpio moon needs to get good at identifying who those people are and get good at being vulnerable and sharing their life with those people. A Scorpio moon needs that intense companionship. They need intense friendship, loving relationships to really enrich them and to give their life meaning. I really feel that's very important. But Scorpio moons are not going to do that to everyone. If a Scorpio moon doesn't think you're worthy, they're going to be a shell of themselves. They're going to be like an actor. They're going to be like a non-playable character in a video game, right? They're not good at doing in the middle sometimes, or like titrating things. It's kind of like all or nothing. So you're in or you're out. And so especially to the people that Scorpio moon have maybe deemed to be like out, Scorpio moon is going to come across as very secretive, very mysterious. There are like huge things that'll happen in a Scorpio moon's life, like things that you would just generally share with people around you that a Scorpio moon will not talk about at all with certain people, because they're just like, I'm just like not interested. If it's going to be small, medium talk, it's going to be no talk. It's not going to be that, right? So you can handle my large talk or you can't, but I'm not going to give you in the middle if you can't handle the full spectrum of the stuff. Again, it comes back to a little bit of a challenge for Scorpio moon to learn over their life. Sometimes there is wisdom, there is knowledge, there is a lot of rich experience in between the extremes, black and white. I mean, there's some people that Scorpio moon are just they're just not gonna vibe with, they don't resonate with, and don't worry about those people. But a Scorpio moon should never get in the habit of like preemptively judging people or expecting that people aren't going to be able to understand or receive their intensity just because they judge it or they think it, right? Sometimes that's really driven by Scorpio moon's own fear of vulnerability, their own fear of expressing themselves, and it's not always by an accurate assessment. So it's always a balance. Scorpio moons can get themselves into trouble if they really isolate and they forget and they don't continually practice how to kind of keep being vulnerable. Awesome. Hope this was interesting. We only got to 3. This is all the time I had budgeted for this video, so this is going to be the end of this video. Like I said, I lied. I said I was going to do 4, but there'll be another video. I'm always going to do videos on Scorpio moons. What did you find interesting? What resonated? What else would you like to know? I could do a video about Scorpio moon every day for the rest of my life, and there's still just so much about the experience to cover, but I'm not going to do that. There will be more Scorpio moon videos. I'm going to do other moon signs in the coming weeks. And yeah, that's all for now. Love you all. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel, and talk to you soon.